Guys, how about another hand for all our speakers so far this morning? Amazing. Our next speaker, you guys are in for a treat. He is the leading self-defense expert on the planet. He will not claim that, but I will claim that. I'm going to claim that. He is the founder of the SPEAR system, the No Fear system. He has trained military, police, armed forces members, me, but I'm helpless against anyone. So, but he is, and he's probably the leading expert on fear management. Unbelievable. And you would think for someone who teaches people how to fuck people up, that he would be a mean, nasty individual. But he's the nicest, most caring, most humble, most gracious person. One of my favorite human beings. And nobody cares more about what they do for a living than this man right here. I promise you that. So listen closely. Tony Blauer, everybody.
Thanks, man. Can you guys hear me in the back? Okay. So this is really interesting coming here. I've been hearing about this event for over a decade. We met 2008. And excuse me, Jen?
I'm so sorry.
Did you want to talk? All right. So let's start over. Jay, can you do that again? Start the whole thing over. Thank you. There's so many things I want to talk about. This is going to go by super, super fast. I'm a stream of consciousness speaker. I go off on tangents. I try to catch up. If I miss some stories, if I don't complete a story, catch me later and go, whatever happened to that guy? Coming here a day early was really cool, watching all the different people, watching everybody move and interact. And so I rewrote my presentation like 3 times, which was crazy. I've got notes here that I can't see because I'm 61 and I need glasses, but I'm not going to put them on. And then I've got the presentation up there that I'm going to try and track to. Question, how many of you experience fear in your life? Let me see a show of hands. Just everybody? Okay. How many of you have been intimidated at some point in your life? So I'm going to share a couple of things, and Jay shared a little bit about my background, and I've been training warriors for decades now, and pro fighters, athletes, and I noticed something really interesting in doing that, and that is that the people who manage their fear manage to fight. The people who manage their fear manage to fight. At a certain level, everyone gets to that skill set where they're on the team. They can make it. And then something happens on game day. And so I always tell people, like, on game day, the only thing that changes is your mindset. So I'm going to share some stories here. I'm going to try to blaze through this a little bit and hopefully have some questions at the end. And one of the things that I like to make a joke, when I talk about fear management, a lot of people don't show up. They want me to teach them some like secret. You guys remember the Presidio movie with Sean Connery? You know, my father-in-law would always come up to me and he'd go, "Hey, T, like show me a move. Show me like one move that just fucks somebody up, right?" And I go, "Fred, there's no secret move. You got to manage your fear. You got to figure out what's going on, and what you do should be morally, ethically, legally sound. So you just can't have a move that you've memorized." And he still, to this day, says, "Just show me one move." Everyone's looking for one move. If I had one move, how many of you would want to learn that one move to defend yourself? So let me tell you something about this. If you can't manage your fear, you're not going to access the move. There are lots of people, when Mike Tyson was in his prime, there are lots of people who got in the ring with him who were world-class gladiators, and you couldn't tell by how they performed against him when he was bouncing people off ropes, knocking people out left and right. So on game day, what happened to that athlete? Any one of those guys would light anyone up in this room here, right? They're a pro boxer, ranked in the top 10, and then on game day, something happened. How many of you, honestly, can you take that for me? I'm telling them I'm on that's my phone. It was a joke, guys. It's a joke, it's not my phone. How many of you knew that Mike Tyson threw up before his fights? A couple of you. the fighters in the room that are a bit historians, but you would never know that when he would walk out, right, and then knock somebody out. You just wouldn't know that. That was him. He understood the psychology and the physiology of what he needed to do. Do you think he liked that? No. If I said to you, and here's an interesting thing, if I said to you, look, if you want to be great, you got to puke before your event. If you didn't have that as part of your pre-contest ritual, that'd be really fucking weird, wouldn't it? I remember interviewing, oh my God, I just forgot his name. She was a UFC fighter, champ. Oh man, it'll come back to me after the event. But I'm interviewing this guy. Anyone remember? I talk about it all the time. It's he was K1 champ, UFC heavyweight champ. Maurice Smith, thank you. Who said that? Golf clap for the gentleman in the back, who's listened to all my podcasts apparently. So Maurice Smith, I remember talking to him, and I said, hey, you know, what's your pre-fight ritual? And he would say, well, I like a lie in a massage bed, and put whatever beats of the day, you know, headphones on. He said, I listen to like R&B, I just chill out. Now, I've been in locker rooms, I've trained fighters, I've been in locker rooms, and you've got one guy sitting there, and he's like this, I'm gonna knock this thing out, and he's sitting there like this, and his leg is, anyone ever do that before a competition here? You're like this, right? And then there's another guy walking around, and he's doing this, and then there's somebody, oh, I shouldn't have done that, right? Yeah. Mike's working, by the way. And this guy's punching his face. And then there's Maurice lying there. Now, this guy was a K1 champion, one of the best Thai boxers in the world, won a UFC heavyweight title. If I said to you, and you've all heard stuff about patterning and mirroring great athletes and doing what they do. If I said to you as your coach, you got to do this, you got to follow this. Look, you want to be like this guy. This guy's the champ. If your playlist is Metallica, and this is where you are in your career, walking around, legs pumping, punching your face, that's going to mess you up. Do you understand what I'm saying? I can't change your ritual, and a lot of that is organic. So, great story with Maurice. I love interviewing victims of violence. I love interviewing warriors, fighters. And I'm trying to glean stuff so that as I present, I can share stuff and I go like, this is a consistent strand that runs through all performance. So I said to Maurice, I said, hey, I study fear. What's your relationship with fear before a fight? And he says to me, can I ask you a question? And I'm like, okay, sure. He says, do you have a job? I said, I do. He said, are you afraid to go to work? I said, no. He said, me either. How cool is that? That'd be a cool line in a movie, right? We'd all be like, this guy's gonna kick somebody's ass, right? But if I told you before your event, this is your job, go to work, while that might sound cool, in that moment, if you were really afraid, would that help? Maybe for a nano moment, and then your fear would return. Anyone know what the number one fear is in the world? Public speaking. Not getting eaten by an apex predator like a shark. Not getting dragged to a secondary crime scene. Public speaking. I remember talking at a university on sexual assault, and I had hundreds of, university students, male and female, and I asked them the question, and they all yelled out, public speaking. And I said, would you rather make a speech or get raped? Would you rather make a speech or get tortured? And it's a bizarre thing. And what I realized this, and the joke I make is fear management needs new management, because people are afraid to talk about fear. How often do you talk about fear? Or anyone in this room, type A? Put your hand up, that's everyone, right? And so any of you control freaks, and I don't mean like in the craziness, but like serious athletes are like, hey, don't touch my weight yet. Wait, whatever it is, this is my ritual before I go. We're trying to control outcomes, so we're trying to control ourselves. Does that make sense? Okay. So in the 80s, I was coaching this kid his dad had paid me. He was having a bully issue at school, and his dad paid me, and we didn't know how much damage bullying can do to somebody back in the 80s. It was like his dad was friends with my dad. He said, hey, you do martial arts, train Mitch. Now I was teaching him wrestling, taekwondo, and boxing, which are my 3 arts. So I taught him wrestling, taekwondo, and boxing. You teach what you know. And he got his ass kicked one day. He tells me the story. And I'm not going to get into it because I'm not going to do a self-defense class, right? I got to go to the mindset. But I want to explain to you this journey of this organic, almost serendipitous journey that leads me to here and this whole concept. He got his ass kicked because I didn't teach him to prepare for a scenario. I taught him, and this is just flashed into my head right now, how many fighters learn how to fight, but they don't realize you lose the fight on the walk to the auditorium. I've had coached like athletes. I remember a buddy of mine became friends, Jeremy Kinnick. He was in 5 of the CrossFit Games. The first time I was working with him, and he made it out to the tennis stadium, which is like, Super Bowl game day for them. And he failed, didn't move on up the ladder, and he failed on lifts that he does as warm-ups. And he comes up to me after, but not crying, depressed. He comes up to me after because we have a relationship. I said, what? And he goes, hey, just realized I'm terrified of the tennis stadium. In other words, what is the weight of fear? How many of you have been waiting for good news, bad news? It could be, are you getting into a university? It could be you did a blood test, you're waiting to hear something back, and you're pretending not to be nervous, but of course it's affecting your life, and then somebody calls and says, good news, you're okay. What do you do right away? You jump up, you feel light. I would make this joke, like literally, what is the weight of fear? What is the weight of fear? And remember stream of consciousness. So here I am in the 80s, Mitch gets his ass kicked. I realized we're not doing scenario training, and that day forward, I just started doing scenarios, and it was almost like doing Fight Club before Fight Club was a movie. We'd get together, and it was makeshift, like we'd put on equipment, we weren't crazy, so mouth guard, a hockey helmet, I grew up in Canada, hockey helmet, hockey gauntlets, taekwondo chest guard, baseball shin guards, and we looked like RoboCop or Mad Max shit, right? And we'd beat the shit of each other, and who here remembers VHS? Anyone remember VHS? Wow, a lot of old people here. So VHS, we're recording stuff on VHS, and it would be like once a month we'd have this, people would come in, and we would talk about their fears and scenarios, but we would do stuff where it wouldn't be like Jay, Gunner, go stand over there, tap gloves, fight, let's see what happens. It would be, Jay, you're walking home at night, you're waiting for the bus, you're kind of like, not from this area, so behave like that. And then these 2 guys were given a role to play, and we would do everything from the scenario. So it wasn't like how we practice. It wasn't like someone walks up to you and says, hey man, you got the time? You didn't hook punch him in the head, you didn't kick him in the nuts, you'd probably look at your watch, right? And so we did all these behavioral distractions, and we created like this event. And as word kind of spread about that, people would come in from outside the school, sign their waiver, get into it, and sometimes there'd be like this 115-pound female who was clearly there for cathartic purposes. She'd been a victim of some violent attack. And then there's the other guy there with the cauliflower ear and the busted nose, and you can tell that he's been in fights. And if I said to you, judging a book by a cover, who are you betting on? And it wasn't that they were fighting each other, just how would they do? And you always go with, that's what we do. We say we don't profile, but profiling is just awareness connected to your intuition and your instincts. I think this. If I brought up a huge man here who had cauliflower ears, scars on his face from multiple battles, how many of you would go, that guy's a badass? How many of you might go, that guy's got no defense? Or his face wouldn't look like that, right? Why I say that, he may still kick your ass, but if you don't give yourself permission to fight, you're gonna lose. So if you had to fight this guy, how do you manage your fear? So look at this little neural circuitry that happened there. You see symbols that mean something to you, right? If I put the word run on the screen there, all of you would think about acceleration and locomotion because you're all athletes. If this was a pantyhose conference and I put the word run there, everyone would think about a tear in a stocking. If you were all politicians and I had the word run there, it's the campaign. Do you get that? So words are icons and they impact you in non-conscious ways. And that non-conscious understanding changes your mind speed. When a stimulus gets introduced too quickly, your executive function can be hijacked. So if I said to you, hey, like right after my talk, sorry, but there's a guy, he's looking for you, and he wants to kick your ass. You'd immediately go, what did I do? Who is it? What is it? Like, your brain starts to go, what are you talking about? Why? And we immediately go into what I call a fear loop. So my talk in the next 20, 30 minutes is going to try to get you to change your relationship with fear. And really, I should use my slideshow, right? You know? Did you guys all memorize this? So what is it? The buttons here, up and down, how's this work? Right? There we go. So if you didn't get the message, I think fear permeates everything we do. One of the lines I like to tell people is like, who you talk to determines who you ultimately marry, right? If you can't manage your fear, you can't manage your income or where you work. Did you guys get that? If you can't manage your fear, that's going to impact how much weight you lift. And for me, something I'm personally biased to, if you can't manage your fear, you're not going to defend yourself or your family. Fear throttles everything we do. Fear permeates everything we do. Those who manage their fear manage to fight. Doesn't guarantee you're winning, but it guarantees you're in the fight, and that's the only chance you have. You got to be in the fight. So it's interesting because I've been exploring this for decades, and I grew up afraid of everything. I grew up in the 60s. I was a really good athlete, but I was afraid of winning. I was afraid of losing. I was afraid I was going to let my coach down. I was afraid I was going to let my parents down. I was afraid I was going to let the team down. Never talked about it. Does that resonate with anyone in this room? Just 3? Who else is in? Put your hand up if you're in denial. Put your hand up. Okay, good. If you're unconsciously in denial, put your hand up. Right? You guys get it? Like every one of you. And here's the thing: I've trained guys that hunt terrorists and been in gunfights. And I'll be there and I'll go, guys, anyone any questions? No such thing as a stupid question. Okay, let's take a break. And 3 killers will walk up to me and go, hey, Coach Blauer, I got a question. I go, I just asked if there was a fucking question. You didn't put your hand up. Like, what well, I didn't want to ask it. So here's a guy that'll jump out of an airplane at 20,000 feet and low crawl on a target, get in a gunfight, but is still, doesn't realize it, unconsciously afraid of speaking out about something that might be personal or make him feel vulnerable or whatever. If we change our relationship with fear, we change our mind. If we change our mind, we can change our life and the next thing we have to do. What is the only resource that we can't regenerate on the planet Earth? Time. When you get a fear spike, anyone ever do this, like leave a place, a restaurant, and think you forgot your keys or your phone? How many of you have gone like this and gone, I'll be right back, I think I forgot my keys and my phone? Or do you go like this? Oh, fuck, shit, right? And you go back, and you guys see a phone, you see a phone? Oh, there it is, right? That you agree to, that you acknowledge, but not the denial part. Listen, here's the thing that's so cool about that. Listen to this line. Fear spike could be as silly as I forgot my phone or keys. A fear spike creates doubt in your mind. Agree? Doubt always creates hesitation. You never have a fear spike and doubt and keep moving. If you're about to get in a gunfight and you weren't sure if you had your ammo, which would be weird, right? But you would go like this. You'd go, okay, I got my ammo. Press check, whatever it is. I'm exaggerating, making a cartoony example. You get in the driveway, you start your car, you can't remember if you turned off the stove or the oven or whatever. Do you drive right away while you're thinking that, or you pause and go, and you start to visualize in your mind, correct? Like, did I do that? Did I not do that? Watch this domino. Fear, spike, creates doubt. Doubt creates hesitation. Hesitation creates procrastination. What's the first question? The question I just asked you here. What's the only resource we can't regenerate? Time. When you manage fear, you manage time. Fear management is actually time management. If you want to get more out of what you have to do, you need to recognize you're in what I call the fear loop. The problem is people don't want to admit to fear or talk about fear. Have you ever walked into a room, body language is 60% of communication, have you ever walked into a room and seen somebody who's clearly messed up, nervous about something, scared about something, overwhelmed by something, and they're sitting there like, and you go, hey, are you okay? And they go, yeah, why, what's up? Denial. Or lack of self-awareness. Or I don't have a good relationship with fear. I remember asking a full-time SWAT team that I was working with, I said, if your number one man, your point man, just found out that he's getting divorced, that his kids are on drugs, that everything, his whole life is just fucked up, and he's not sleeping, would you want him to tell you? And everyone in the room said, no, they keep that shit to yourself, man. You know, we're friends and everything, but we have a mission to do. Keep that shit to yourself. Do you agree with that? I probably ruined it because of the theme of my talk. You're going like, that would be the wrong answer to say, yes, I agree with that right now. I get that. But they all, not knowing where I was going, said, no, keep that shit to yourself. I said, if your point man, your most important person, that could be your leadoff quarterback, this person, whatever it is, you, if you can't talk about that and do what I call clear the fear, then I got that person distracted. So fear creates doubt, doubt creates hesitation, hesitation creates procrastination. Unchecked, what do I mean by unchecked? If you can't stop and go, okay, what's going on? Why do I feel this way? If you can't stop and acknowledge it, then you carry it with you. Remember I asked you what's the way to fear? And you're totally distracted, or possibly distracted enough that you can't hit the proverbial flow state everyone wants to hit. I just wrote something the other day, and I realized that if you're worried about losing while you're winning, you can't enjoy winning. You'll never hit that flow state. Even if you win, you might wonder, was that a fluke? How'd I do? Or, because you can't talk about it, you wonder if you can repeat it. And all of that contaminates that victory and that experience, which means you can't actually look at what you did to replicate it. How do I set up this process again? Does that make sense? Very, very, to me, super, super interesting. I told the SWAT team, I said, hey, if you're on my team and you haven't slept in 2 days and you're gonna go in first and set the pace for everything, because we're coming in behind you, you fucking better tell me, hey, let me go in number 3, I haven't slept in 2 days. And I'm gonna go, you know what, you're gonna breach, you're going in last. Actually sit outside here and work the radio. Right? If you don't understand the psychology of fear versus the biology of fear and the physiology of fear, because when people think about fear, they go fight, flight, freeze, and all that stuff. And I'm like, that's post-mortem, that's forensic, that's, oh, look, they ran, they fought. You need to coach yourself in the moment. How do you do that? The only way you can do that is self-awareness. Like if you don't know that you're experiencing fear and carrying the weight of fear, how do you talk about it? And we all lie about it. Everyone in this room lies about it, about something. So you may be amazing at this or that, but you're either in denial or you prefer not to, because again, nobody likes to feel vulnerable. Which button was it again? The right one. Can you come up here and do it for me? Okay. So fear. This is a quote from the movie Aftermath with Will Smith. There's a bazillion memes. You've all seen it, right? So check it out. Fear's not real. It's the danger that's real. That's summarizing it. And everyone shares that, and it's crazy. But if fear can trigger a heart attack, if fear can prevent you from doing what you want to do, or experiencing what you set out to do, I think fear is pretty real. This well-known motivational speaker, Dr. Wayne Dyer, I think I pronounced his name right. He asked 3 questions that blew my mind years ago. Number one question, first question, was, if you didn't know where you lived, and you looked at all the places to live in the world, where would you want to live, and why aren't you living there? Second question, if you didn't know what you did, and you looked at all the things you could do, what would you want to do, and why aren't you doing that? And the last question is, if you didn't know how old you were, and you looked in a mirror, how old would you think you were? Those 3 questions blow my mind, but the answer to doing something with the answer that you get is managing your fear. Because if I said, look, you should do this and live here, and you'll look younger because you found your purpose, or whatever you want to call that, like, that's a lot of fear management. How many of you had a shitty job for a long time? And when you decided and when you realized that you hate your boss and you hate your job, did you quit the next day, or was it like 7 years later? It's always like 7 years later. How many of you have been in a shitty relationship? Look at the hands are like, just in case I'm on film, because I'm still in that shitty relationship. Like, fuck, keep that hand down. But what keeps you in a shitty relationship, business or personal? Fear. Is this the best I can do? Can you guys keep it down? It's really distracting. Like, I'm trying to make me afraid. Was it John? John can talk then because he's so fucking big. So for me, fear is real. So real quick on this. In the 80s, I was teaching this whole fear management block, and we were talking about, it was back then when you guys all remember the No Fear company, because most of you had bought their shirts at some point. So I bought every one of their shirts, and it's bullshit, right? I still had fear. I had all the shirts. It didn't matter if I was wearing them. And we were writing and talking about this idea that, let's say you think that when you get certified, you get qualified, you get to a certain level, that you then don't have any fear. What happens in that moment if you experience fear? So what if you're on top of the world, a fighter, business, and then something like the pandemic hits and the lockdown hits, or some new fighter steps in and you go, I wonder if that guy can beat me. If you've bought off on this idea that you get to a place in life where you have no fear, you're gonna have a big problem if fear rears its ugly head. Because it'll shatter your paradigm. But what if you just said, look, life's a roller coaster ride, and nobody gets up in the morning and goes, the last few days was pretty good. I hope something fucking horrible happens today. Because that'll just make me more resilient. Like, you don't think that way. In fact, what do we do when shit happens? And it could be a flat tire. How many of you have had a flat tire? Did you jump out of the car and go, yes, fuck? I have almost 0 reps changing a flat tire. This is a chance to experience that, Or did you stand there and stare at the tire like Buzz fucking Lightyear going, fuck, right? Again, denial. But what's happening and what's making things worse, and then you lift up the trunk like this and it bounces down and fucking hits you in the head, and you're like, and it's a horrible experience because you're angrily changing the tire. Right? Anyone ever stand in front of an elevator going, shit, right? Got lots of stress in us. Let's hurry up. Let's hurry up. But what do I understand is every time you do that, there's a movie playing in your head. And that movie in your head is something's wrong. I'm going to be late. Something's going to fuck up. You guys tracking what I'm talking about? When you're standing in front of the tire, you're like, I'm going to be late for this meeting. This is going to fuck this up. I got to call this person. And you're juggling all that, and you can never hit flow state and become the best tire changer you could possibly be in that moment. That was an attempt at humor. Okay, so the whole no fear thing was this play on words is what if I decided instead of going, why am I afraid? Why am I afraid? Going, what's fear here to teach me? What if I change my relationship with fear? What if I just look into this? What if I study it a little bit more? Everyone talks about comfort zone and discomfort zone. I created a third circle. It's called the holy shit zone, right? And your job is to make the holy shit zone as small as possible by doing things. And I'm not one of those guys like, you know the memes that go around, do something that scares you every day. That's not me. I'm like, life will present you with things that scare you. That's what you need to look at. Right? How many of you are afraid of like heights? Honestly. How many of you, if I said to you, you're gonna skydive today? How many of you right away are like, no way. There's no fucking way I'm jumping over a plane. Okay, a bunch of you. I'm gonna talk about this a little bit later because I'm afraid of heights. Okay? So this is all about getting to know fear. This is cool. This is kind of a little bit of background. I'm gonna try and blaze through this. But again, I grew up in Canada, and you're either skier or skater. I grew up on skis. I was like a really good skier, and people would whisper, "Hey, I wonder if Tony will keep going, go to the Olympics." And I was competing in freestyle. I was competing in giant slalom. I never finished a race. I never got on a podium, but I was one of the best skiers on the team. I was never able to control myself. Now, some of you might think, "Oh, that's self-sabotage," but I didn't not show up. I remember this one race, and how many of you are coaches in the room? How many of you are athletes in the room? Okay, so everyone's a coach, right? You got to coach yourself. So listen carefully to this, because this is this duality, this conversation we have all the time, but we've never talked about it really. And so I'm at the top of the hill. I've already pissed 5 times. I want to projectile vomit. We're above the tree line. Right, that's how high up on the mountain we are. And my coach, who's coached me for 3 or 4 years at this time, he comes up to me about 15 minutes before I go, rubbing my shoulders, rubbing my knees, going, "You ready, kid?" And I go, "Yes, coach." He goes, "How do you feel?" I'm like, "Great, coach." He goes, "Okay, course is getting icy around gate 50. There's like a huge rut there. Take that hind outside because like people are really losing it. Got it." So I take off like a bat out of hell, and I wipe out. I catch my tip third gate from the bottom in this giant slalom, and I fell so hard that I actually slid through the finish line. Of course, I was disqualified. And one of the timers along the way comes down. And he says, "Man, hey, too bad you fell there, because when you passed me, you were about a second ahead of the guy that ultimately won the race." Like that's a hard, and that's how good I was at the technical parts of skiing. Not so good at the strategic and tactical, right? And I tell that story because I often wonder, what if my coach had come up to me a half an hour earlier, said, "Hey, how do you feel, kid?" I'd have lied to him again, because remember, I'd already pissed 5 times and wanted to projectile vomit. I wonder if he had come up to me a half an hour earlier and said, "Hey, how do you feel?" And I went, "Great, coach." If he had put his arm around me and said, "Have you noticed something? I've been coaching you for 3-4 years now. Have you noticed that you don't finish important races?" I'd have looked at him and went, "I don't know what you're talking about, coach." Right? And I sort of started crying, and the tears would have froze because it was above the tree line. And what if he had said to me, "What's going on?" And what if I was able to say, "I'm so fucking scared. If I'm so good, why am I so scared?" You understand that question? If I'm so good, why am I so scared? Anyone in this room ever, maybe not the exact words, but anyone, does that resonate with anybody? Fuck yeah. And it doesn't have to be about what you're great at. You might be the best at what you're doing and why you're here, but it could be something else. You can't say I love you. You can't say I'm sorry. You can't public speak. You can't. It's something else. People sometimes hire me to coach them in public speaking, and they go, so really, you know, it's crazy. I know this, you know, I can't speak in public. And I'll like, give me an example. And I go, well, like I'm talking to a bunch of people, and I'm talking about, you know, articulation or obsequious nature and pedantic, and I'm making fun using big words, and I'm going, you're speaking perfectly now. I go, yeah, but it's in front of public. I go, but I don't know you, so I'm public. No, that's what I mean, in front of a group. So like when you're sitting, did you have a family? Yeah, 3 kids, wife. Okay, so like, how do you like say pass the salt in front of your family? Like you must go, like, and they're going, no, funny, Mr. Blauer, like in front of strangers. But what I'm showing you here is when you have a fear spike, if you don't have the idea that I can peel this onion and figure it out, that's the only way. But that'll never happen if you don't see it as like a map. And that's what I'm going to share with you here. So again, my whole thing was this, and I don't want to bring this into, this is, again, part of what was cool about coming here and watching people and listening to all the speakers and everything, is just, I want to remind you that everyone here is a coach. You coach yourself every day. And if you can't say to your coach, I'm fucking scared, then that's going to change. And you know, it's crazy because I go like, how many things in my life have I not done because I was afraid or spent weeks overthinking it? Business deals, relationships, conversations. And this comes back to fear management equals time management. That if you would still be here today, how many things in your life do you look back at that you were consumed by fear? But you don't call it that because it's, people like to bullshit themselves. Are you afraid? No. Ready to go. Let's go. And the individuals that go, fuck fear, I'll fight anybody, I'll do that, in their own way, if you understand that, that's their fear of talking about fear. Unless they're a sociopath, in which case, or a unicorn. So unicorn or sociopath, then it doesn't matter. Okay. Intimidation occurs when you're worrying about what somebody or something does to you instead of what you must do to them. I asked you earlier on, how many of you have been intimidated? Everyone put their hand up. Intimidation happens before whatever you're worrying about happened. And how many of you have been scared, intimidated by something, and then you go through it, and then it's high fives after, and you're like, wow, that wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. You tracking? So this is the movie in your mind. And I want to play on that because I want to share with you some stuff that when you leave here, you go, I can do this. And it's that whole no fear thing. So I'm going to tell you 2 quick stories here. Those aren't the actual pictures from back then because these stories came from the 80s. And we didn't have, you know, iPhones and smartphones and shit like that. But the first story real quick was this kid, Sean, that I was training for amateur kickboxing title. And amateur kickboxing fights were 4 rounds, and the regular fights were 3 rounds, and we fought with the title as a 4-round fight. So we're in the pit of the auditorium, old, you know, peeling paint, old school, you know, Rocky I type feel. And I am more nervous than my fighters ever were. I'm like ready to projectile vomit on them. And I'm like, dude, you want me to puke on you? Like, you need to throw up? I'll puke on you if you need me to. I'll do that for you, right? And I'm so nervous. My heart is pounding. And I look at Sean. I get the frog out of my voice. I go, how do you feel, Sean? Because I didn't want his coach to go, how do you feel, Sean? We're good, right? Because I thought that might make him nervous. So I was like, I go, how do you feel, Sean? And he goes, I'm good, coach. I'm nervous, but I'm good. And I look at him, I go, dude, you're supposed to be nervous. You're about to get in a fight. A guy's gonna try and kick you and punch you in the face. You're gonna do the same thing. And if he looks at you, this is back in the Roberto Duran, Sugar Ray Leonard era, and he goes, if he's staring at you like Duran, know inside that his heart is pounding and his adrenaline's pumping, and he's just got the good facade. But inside he's going, okay, I'm about to get in a fight. And he looks at me, pound fists, he goes, thanks, coach. And I sit down a little smug, thinking, wow, that could have been a line in a shitty boxing movie, right? Like, I'm thinking I'm a little proud of myself. But there's something I teach everybody. I call it the 3 I's: instincts, intuition, intelligence. And if you trust your instincts and you listen to your intuition, because intuition is the thing that whispers in your ears, and then usually, how many of you have had an experience where after you said, I knew that was gonna fucking happen? That was intuition at some point saying, don't do a deal with this person, don't go out with this girl, don't go out with this guy, don't get in a fight with this person. And something happened, and then after you go, I knew I was gonna get my ass kicked there. So 3 I's: instincts, intuition, intelligence. So I say to Sean, so I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden something starts to nag at me. So one of the things that I want you really to take away from this is this idea that if you have a bad feeling in your body about something, address it, face it. I call this the choose safety model. Don't confuse choosing safety with playing it safe. Playing it safe is a boring life. Choosing safety, so I'm gonna give an extreme example. You're in an active shooter situation. The safest thing might be charging the threat. The safest thing might be playing dead. The safest thing might be running out the back door. You need to choose safety. You understand? Like, it's not memorizing a single technique. And if you apply that extreme example to your life, what is the safest thing I can do in this business deal? What is the safest thing I can do in this relationship? What is the safest thing I can do in this confrontation? And if I've got a very special relationship with my coach, what is the safest thing that I can do for me as an athlete if I feel like I'm disconnected to this event coming up? The safest thing I can do is talk to my coach. But only if my coach is a true coach. There's a lot of coaches that are trainers, right? And they can give you the techniques. Hey, watch out for gate 50. What I realized, remember my ski coach? My ski coach, even though we were really close, was a ski trainer. Your job as a coach is to inspire performance, right? On game day, this is how you already make your fist. This is how you're going to ski. This is how you're going to throw the ball, hit the bat, hit the ball, whatever it is. The homework is done. You can't be a better athlete on game day. It's all up here. So, Sean, I'm sitting there, I get this nagging feeling in my body, something's off, and I realize he told me he's nervous. I gave him a great answer. That was my answer, right? You're supposed to be nervous, right? It's good. And I go, Sean, I got to apologize, man. He goes, why? That answer was like right out of a fortune cookie. It was cool. It was a poster. Dan Gable, if it's important, do it every day. It could be a quote on, like, right? But I was intuitively trying to find a way, as somebody who lived with fear my whole life, so afraid of it that I was afraid to talk about it. And nobody talked about it. How many of you were told when you were 7 years old, these are the physiological effects of fear? Shallow breath, vertical breathing, sweaty palms, tunnel vision, auditory exclusion. Anyone ever told that? Fuck no. So now, depending on who you are and how your coach mentors you, you don't ever self-actualize. Big fancy word for become the best version of whatever you're trying to do. And even if you've gotten really good, it still holds you back if it's an unconscious element. You tracking? Okay? So I say to Sean, Sean, I apologize, gave you a fortune cookie answer. What are you afraid of? He goes, what? It was a great answer. It calmed me down. I go, but I didn't ask you what you were nervous about. He goes, it's nothing. Well, then tell me what it is. He goes, it's stupid. Peeling the onion. He goes, I go, Sean, tell me what the fuck you're afraid of. By the way, is it okay if I swear? Kind of late, right? Okay. So he goes, I've done 10 rounds in the gym, and I've only ever fought 3-round fights, but this is a 4-round fight. It's stupid, I told you. Like, am I going to be able to do 4 rounds? Imagine if we hadn't had that conversation, and he went in there worrying about his stamina and endurance in the 3rd and 4th round. Does he maybe move a little tighter and slower because he's trying to, like preserve energy and misses his minimum 8 kick count or whatever the heck it is? Do you guys get that? So I looked at him, I said, Sean, can you do 2 rounds? And he's like, yeah, of course. I said, so just do 2 rounds twice. Now, a bunch of you smiled and laughed, and that's what Sean did. And at the end of the second round, in an amateur kickboxing match, this ring was 16 feet, you're 14 feet away from the other corner, you can hear the other corner. The end of the second round, squirt some water in Sean's mouth, and I said, hey, can you do 2 rounds? He said, yes, coach. Like this was a bad movie, the other corner, and how many of you have like been in competition where you're like, my legs feel like they're 50 pounds each, and you haven't even started yet, right? Like that's the weight of fear. The other corner says, just as I said that to Sean, the guy looks up and says, coach, what round is this? Going into the third. So I always tell people, never let the math beat you. How many of you would defend yourself against one person? Put your hand up. 2 people. Don't be cavalier and go, if the fight's on, I got to do it. 3 people. Hands are going down, hands are going down. What you're doing is you're starting a movie in your mind about what it would be like to fight 3 people. What if I told you fight 3 people one time, like each person, one by one? In other words, if it's a choiceless choice, how many of you hate running? Hate running, right? So if somebody says, Tony, go run a mile, I go, okay, but I don't really run a mile, I just run 4 400s. I break it down in my mind so that it's something attainable. These are simple, simple tricks. Ali used to hate running. He would put his running shoes on top of his clock. When the clock would go off, he would have to touch his running shoe to turn the clock off, and that was a tactile trigger. Dude, go do your road work. It was just a trick. So what I'm sharing with you are simple tricks, because I can't take your fear away, and some stuff will never go away. There are things in your life you have to do afraid. But you got to manifest the courage to do that. Okay? Next story. And I have no idea what I'm doing on time. I'll just keep going until somebody fights me. Dan. So Dan, this is not a picture of Dan, but Dan had an amazing jump back kick. I saw Dan drop a guy in sparring with a round kick to the head in between a jab and a cross, which is insane timing. He had amazing legs. Dan lost every fight that he competed in. At the time, it was only 3 or 4 in amateur stuff, and I couldn't be at this one fight, and he calls me like 15 minutes before he's about to go out, and he goes, and this is like, again, in the 80s, where I'm still, I would probably do a better job coaching him now, decades later. I'm still learning stuff about this and figuring it out. But he calls me up, he goes, Coach, 15 minutes, hands are wrapped and everything, and I was just like wondering, and I couldn't be at this fight, so someone else was cornering for him. He says, you got anything you can, like he wanted some secret shit, right, on the phone. And I said, Dan, I said, what's your best move? He goes, jump back kick. I go, you never throw it. He says, I just, and he explains that when he's about to launch it, he's seeing the counter. And any of you who, I don't think I have to go deeper in that, right? You see the counter. And I want to get into the head a little bit here. How many of you can think back the time you pulled your hamstring running or lifting or screwed up your back, that just before the injury, you knew you were going to get injured? Let me see a show of hands on that. Right? That's your intuition whispering in your ear, saying something like, I wouldn't do that lift right now. But we go, I'm okay, I warmed up. Or whatever, but we don't listen to it. If you follow my model, that might not happen, because the model is what? Choose safety. I am now not fully focused on that movement. I'm a little distracted by this little ping in my head. So here we are. Dan's on the phone. I go, Dan, do you remember that time you were sparring that guy that came in and you dropped him with a round kick to the head in between the jab cross? He goes, yeah. So what I did on purpose is I got him to remember how fucking good he was. And then I said to him, Dan, if you didn't fear fear, what would you do tonight? And he goes, what? I said, if you didn't fear fear, what would you do? He goes, thanks, coach. Gets off the phone. Literally like 16 or 17 minutes later, he calls me, jump back, kick to the face, knock the guy out, first kick. Right? That was bottled up inside him. on game day, you can't be a better athletic athlete. Everything is up here, moving along, speeding along here. The people who manage the fear manage to fight, and it's got nothing to do with the skill set there. In the 80s, when I was cultivating this whole program, and I told you about that 120-pound woman and the other guy that looked like a fighter. I've seen the big guys push away the danger, flinch, turn. We weren't tapping out in scenarios, but basically tap out of the scenario. Because people were used to sucker punching people. People were used to what I call lovingly, and this is the technical term, a douchebag fight, right? Where guys are like, what are you looking at me, you're looking at me, you're looking at me. Real violence is extremely different than that. Violence against an asocial predator, there's no preparation, there's no awareness. All fights are dangerous. The most dangerous fight is the ambush. Metaphorically, the ambush for you is the fear spike, because we're talking about the no fear model. Does that make sense? The ambush is you're ready to go, and you're like, what the hell's that? And then you start overthinking shit. This is not my daughter, but it's a cool little story I'm going to tell you because it's the perspective I had years ago. I took the family to Europe. I was coaching in Europe, and my daughter, Madison, is climbing on monkey bars, and she's like bear crawling across the monkey bars. I told you I was afraid of heights, right? And she's above me. It's like that height where I'd have to jump up and grab it. And she stops at the top, not smiling. I could see her knuckles get tight. And all of a sudden start visualizing, remember the movie in your mind. Who here's got kids? What am I visualizing? What are you visualizing now? She's up there and she freezes. I can see fear, white knuckles. What are you visualizing? Security, escort that gentleman out, please. Wow. The legend, Gunnar Peterson, heckling me. I'm visualizing if she freaks out there, I can't reach her, and she falls. If she falls, she's gonna fall on her throat, on her teeth, I'm visualizing all this shit. But I don't want to contaminate her with my fear, which is something we do. We accidentally go, don't ever do this. This happened to me when I was a kid. My son's up here. Are you afraid of heights? A little bit? So when he was like 4 or 5 years old, I'll show you this picture of him standing there with a Ninja Turtle shirt on and nunchakus on and super tight pants, and I got this picture of him. He was climbing up on my rings, on my rope, sitting up on the rope. I'm in my office. I look out the window, and he's doing this, and at an elevated ring, if he fell off there, he could break his neck if he fell backwards. And I came running out the room, and I went, Nick! And he was like, duh! And it started, and I sprinted over there, and I infected him with my fear of heights. Now you know why. No fear, buddy. So I was and I felt guilty about that forever. I was very aware of that when my daughter was up there, that if I went, like she'd have been scared, right? So she's bear crawling, she stops, and I go, she goes, Dad, and I hear the fear in her voice. And I go, what's up? And I'm trying to control. Yeah, what's up? Oh my God, what's up? And she goes, I'm scared. And I go, hey, it's okay, just lower your body down like you're lying outside on a blanket, and you'll just lower your legs through there. I can grab your legs there at that point. I'm just trying to get her to control the descent so she doesn't slip or panic. And she looks at me, she goes, oh, I don't want to stop. I just wanted to tell you I'm scared. And then she continues moving, and I'm like, holy shit. I paid her for a private lesson after, but I was like, what the fuck, right? It was amazing. So, practice courage, small steps. How many of you always return food that's not cooked the way you like it? Always. Why wouldn't you? How many of you are thinking, I don't want some special sauce, thank you, right? And so honestly, let me see a show of hands. How many of you, when I said you don't, why, were thinking about nothing? This is the only exercise you're getting in my class, so put up your fucking hands, work your shoulders. So you all visualize, no, I don't return food because I don't want some guy spitting in my food or throwing. I'm not going to ask you why you're eating at a restaurant where somebody might have sex with your burger or something, and right? What's interesting is this. How do you practice courage? You practice overcoming, first of all, and this is the sequence. So listen, this is the lesson for you. You get a fear spike, and you go, this steak's medium. I ordered it medium rare. I don't want the cook, the chef to come out here and fucking stab me with a, and you're going, why am I thinking that? And then practice, even if your voice is nervous, practice sending back food if you have to. Practice emoting if you have to. You practice courage. Got it? Okay. Fear is contagious, but so is courage. These are actual pictures of my kids on a trip to Hawaii. And this is in Waimea Bay. There's a huge rock there. People are jumping off it, doing flips. On one side, the locals. On this side is all the tourists. And there's a jump there. Does this have infrared? Does it have a pointer on this? I don't need it. It's okay. This is my wife down here. This is like 35 feet up. That's Olivia. So I'm afraid of heights. Kids see people jumping off the rocks from a distance. That looks cool, right? You get up there, this trail, you walk up there, and the wind is going up there. And my daughter, Madison, top right, and Olivia are sitting there. They're up there for like 25 minutes. Olivia's crying. She won't go. So Madison gestures for me. I go up there. I'm like walking up there. There's adults walking back who aborted. They're like, I'm not doing this, right? Because you had to clear 3 feet of rock to get into the area. So I'm walking up there going, oh, starting to get the vertigo. And I'm like, Kaylu, let's go. And she's like, and I didn't do that. I was like, I don't want her to be afraid. Hey, what's up? And she's crying. Dad, I want to jump, but I can't. I can't move. I'm frozen in fear. I said, it's okay. We're going to be here. We're here a week. We'll try another day. What I'm really thinking is, get the fuck off this rock, right? And I'm like, let's go. And I'm kneeling down to try and be a good coach and a good dad, but I'm really just scared of the height, so I'm kneeling down. And we had a horrible experience in Virginia in 2009, end of the year. We had a home invasion, and everyone was safe. I wasn't home. My family was home. And my daughter looks at me, and she says, if I can make it through a home invasion, I can jump off a rock, right? And I said to her, yeah, sweetie, you can. And hold on a sec. So she jumps. And I'm like, holy shit. Amazing. I'm so proud of her. And then she looks at me and says, Dad, you do it. And I'm like, fuck. And I jumped because courage is contagious. And I had to jump scared. Thank you. We're never going back to Hawaii, just in case she wants to. So this is a fun one. I'm at Fort Bragg working with this special unit down there. We meet on the weekend and talking about the course. And there's 2 guys at this meeting. And then after the meeting, one of the guys says to me, hey, you want to go jumping? And I go, you mean like this, like up and down? And he goes, ha. He goes, no, like skydiving, going skydiving. I said, nah. Hold on a sec. Busy. And let me check. Yeah, no, nothing on my schedule that says jump out of an airplane today. And he goes, with air quotes, he says, aren't you Mr. Fear Management? And I said, yeah, motherfucker, I'm managing my fear by not jumping out of an airplane. So, true story. He laughs, like a big laugh, and his buddy laughs, a nervous laugh. And I knew immediately, this guy hates jumping out of an airplane. But he's in the same unit, which means he's qualified to jump out of an airplane. So I look at the guy who was air quoting me, and I said, "You have no fear?" He goes, "I fucking love it. I got over 600 jumps. I go all the time, and just freaking anytime I can." I said, "No fear." He goes, "No." And I go, "Okay, cool. So I'm going to pack your chute for you today." And he looks at me and he points, he goes, "You're not coming anywhere near my chute." And I said, "Did I just introduce any fear?" And he goes, "What?" I said, "What are you visualizing right now?" Just me joking about packing his chute immediately started him visualizing malfunction, secondary chute, what's Blauer gonna do? Do you understand what I did? And I went, "Any fear?" And he's like, "Fuck," right? And it wasn't, so fear isn't always like startle, flinch. Fear is just, am I carrying around a movie in my mind that's not serving me? And it's wasting time, okay? So super, super cool. It takes courage to manage fear. The guy beside him, and here's the thing, I don't want to learn how to skydive from a Red Bull athlete who's an adrenaline junkie who's 22 years old. I'm going to learn how to skydive from a 55-year-old ex-military guy who, how do I know he's good at this? Because he's 55, right? He's not 22. You understand? So there's a lot to be said for that wisdom. And if you're not afraid to do something, then it doesn't take any courage to do it. You can't be brave if you're not afraid. The primary ingredient in bravery and courage is fear. If somebody's a sociopath or just the unicorn and they go like, you talk to someone and go, "I have zero fear when I compete, I have zero." If that's true, and it might be semantics, then they got nothing to teach the rest of the world, do they? Does that make sense? Yes. I'm like, I have fear every day, and I manage it. And if we get past the semantics, everyone has a fear every day. Whether it's, how do I look today? Will I be well received? When you get this job, is this guy gonna compliment me? How'd I do? Blah, blah, blah. So, you can't be brave if you're not afraid. Love that line. Super quick. How are we on time? Did I get 10 more minutes? Okay. 5, 10, 11? So, which time zone? 10 minutes. Time zone. This time zone? Eastern? Okay. So, this, Howard Gardner, famous social scientist, I was listening to an interview of him one day, and I heard him say, 80% of your motivation is derived from your expectations. 80% of your motivation is derived from your expectation. I was like, holy shit. And I went back to my office. There was no whiteboards back then. It was blotters. And I wrote that down, and I drew this out. And I pushed the wrong button here. I wrote this out. It's called the cycle of behavior. You can Google it online. There's different versions of it. You can take pictures of it now. But I'm not going to go through the whole thing because we don't have time. But it basically became this map where I start off my day or my event or my whatever it is, my date. I'm totally motivated. And then all of a sudden, a sudden stimulus gets introduced. I'm in a fear spike. Right? And when I'm in the fear spike, that's the red area. And these are, again, I can't go through the whole thing, but a sudden stimulus, I get a fear spike. Neuroassociation, a fancy word for how your brain links up a symbol. That was that run example. So if a guy stands up and he's got, the scars and all that, and you have to fight, and you're going, oh, this guy's gonna friggin' like suplex me and then ground and pound me. You're already visualizing, remember the slide on intimidation? When you're visualizing what someone else can do to you instead of what you must do to them. How many of you know the name Kevin Ogar? So Kevin's a friend of ours. He brought me into his place to do a seminar. We go through this whole thing. The next day, Kevin, just you don't know, is paralyzed from the waist down, tragic accident, pitched a snatch, hit some plates that were too far behind him, bounced back, severed his spine, paralyzed. Beast, great coach, beast. He does a seminar. The next day after the seminar, he PRs his bench press. He calls me up, and like he's an animal with his strength. So he's paralyzed. What's his best lift? Bench press, right? And he says, Coach, you're not gonna believe this. He said, I'm lying under the bar, and I'm going, and I'm struggling, and I realize I'm worrying about what the bar can do to me instead of what I must do to the bar. I said to him, well, Kevin, if anyone should be afraid of an Olympic bar, it's fucking you, right? But he PR'd, but how many of you like warm up with your snatch with PVC and a light bar, and then your form starts to go out the window as you put more weight, and your coach is there going, you got this, because you know the biomechanics, you understand the kinesiology, you understand that whole thing, but what you don't understand is the weight of fear and how fear will tighten you up. A fearful athlete is going to be an injured athlete. They're tighter. And like me as a skier, they're never going to hit that flow state. So in the fear loop, we got the doubt, hesitation, fixation, limiting beliefs. Stop and breathe if you can. Obviously, in a violent encounter, you can't go, hey, hold on, stop stabbing me for a sec. I gotta find my spit, right? But in most of life, you can pause and go, what's going on here? And so we got to get out of the fear loop. And the getting out of the fear loop is this challenge or threatened door. Am I challenged or threatened? Do I have the skill? Do I deserve to be here? And you got to get your reps, like the fighting analogy that I gave you, right? I can't take this new fighter that's had 2 fights and go, I need you to listen to Maurice Smith's like rhythm and blues soundtrack because this is what he listens to and we're going to model him. This guy goes, no, I like Metallica. No, you got to listen to this. And stop with the adrenaline bouncing around there. Go lie down. He's going to lose faster, right? It's just not right for him yet. So the challenge or threatened door, I get out of there, and you've got 2 lines there. You've got the green and the yellow. One is the duress path, and one is that flow state. Everyone wants the flow state, and that's what we visualize, but then something happens and it derails us. One last thing here. If you look at the fear loop, we've got doubt, hesitation. You've got fixation, procrastination. Unchecked, that can become non-clinical anxiety, or in some cases worse. Like you're just fixating on something over and over again. We all felt that this year. You read a tweet that's not even true, and all of a sudden you're like, holy shit. I was in the UK teaching 52 police officers, 52 trainers, when President Trump closed the borders, and Heathrow is the only airport open. I got up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom. Number one, that was a joke. And my phone's lighting up, and it's my son and my daughter and my wife, and they're all texting me. Are you okay? Are you going to be able to get home? How many of you have seen The Walking Dead? Right? I'm like going, and all I'm reading is they've closed America. And you get all the misinformation. But in a nano moment, that movie started playing in my mind. I was stuck in Europe. I'm not going to be there to protect my family. I see zombies everywhere. Then I'm like, okay, I got to get to Heathrow. Well, everyone's going to be in Heathrow. We're all going to die on the airplane, right? But like a minute has gone by. I'm in my room, and all of a sudden I notice I'm sweating. I'm breathing. I sit down on my bed, and I remember, oh, fuck, who's that fear management guy you know? And I started thinking, okay, dude, you're in the fear loop right now. Take a deep breath, calm down, you'll figure this out. And that's where it starts. You got to have that first conversation with yourself. Self-awareness is the gateway to situational awareness. Situational awareness is what everyone sees. Your coach goes, oh man, I thought you had that. They didn't see, like my coach, my ski coach. Watch the gate, man. Gate 52. It was like, dude, what's going on in your fucking head? You're a way better skier than to have that conversation, however it needs to happen. So the duress path is when I figure out my plan, and everyone does this. You're going to do a lift later, and you're going, man, this is the lift where I always fail. This is the one I can't PR this weight. Maybe I'll PR today. That is not like flow state conversation, because there is no conversation in flow state, right? So why I created the duress path is because that's part of the journey. You got to go there, and self-awareness goes, do I still need to say this to myself? Tracking? And it's the exact same path. Like you go for a run and you go, I hope I don't get shin splints. I hope my back does. And you still run, and it was a good run. That's the duress path. And then one day you're running going, this was fun running today. That's the green state. And one day you're like, holy shit. right? So I don't even put flow state up there because it's a unicorn thing for a lot of people. Next thing here, fear factory in the mind. When we get the fear spike, your brain is like a movie studio. And there's an acronym that I love to use, false expectations appearing real. You've probably seen it. But false expectations appearing real is when you're visualizing a future event that's immobilizing you in the present. Getting ready to go, and I'm thinking about this. It's that whole intimidation connection. So you're the producer, you're the director, you're the screenwriter, you're the casting director, and you cast yourself as victim number one in a horror movie for the next 5 minutes in your brain. How many of you have walked out of movies because they're shit? Or how many of you go, 5 or 6 of you, of 500 people or 600 people, right? So get this, most people don't, because you go, man, I just spent $20 on popcorn and parking. Fucking, I'm gonna watch the movie, right? What's the only resource you can't get back? Time. So sit in a shitty movie. Or get out, go work out, go for a walk, do something with your kids, your family, your friends, read a good book, right? How do you get out of the movie in your head? Self-awareness, right? Okay, I love this. Tyson Customato, his original trainer. Can you guys see that back there? I can read it out loud if you can't see it, but it's such a wonderful, you must understand fear so you can manipulate it. Fear is like fire. You can make it work for you. It can warm you in the winter, cook your food when you're hungry, give you light when you're in the dark, and produce energy. Let it go out of control. It can hurt you, even kill you. Fear is a friend of exceptional people. Great coach. Okay. Answer really quick. What's the opposite of courage? Fear. Anyone else? Cowardice. So most people say cowardice or fear. So fear is an emotion. It's not the opposite of courage, because I already told you, you can't be brave if you're not afraid. And one of the ingredients, if I looked on the ingredients inside box of bravery and courage, it was number one would be fear. Okay, gluten-free, fear, it'd be in there, all organic, right? So check this out. The opposite of courage, and if I had a big whiteboard, I'd do this, but the opposite of courage isn't cowardice. There's very few cowardly people. When you don't do something courageous, when you see a fireman or 9/11 or something, or we saw like the amazing, what the military does, what our law enforcement do, what all the public safety doctors, when you see them do something and you think for a nano moment in the back of your head, I wonder if I would do that. What you're visualizing there is that movie of you not being able to do it. You tracking? So the opposite of courage is discourage, D-I-S hyphen. It's when you discourage yourself from doing the fearful thing. Different way to look at that. Anytime you back away from a challenge and you rationalize it, and you spell rationalize hyphen with a lie, rational lie, you go, nah, it's not that important. I don't need to do that. I'll do that later. And if it was truly fear, again, you won't know that unless it's the self-awareness piece. Okay, so the opposite of courage is discourage, and fear management is time management. We're wrapping up here, and last points here just from this, and I probably don't have any time for any questions, but I'll be around, of course, the rest of the day. You can't be brave if you're not afraid. Remember, the opposite of courage is discourage. Self-awareness is the key to situational awareness. Situational awareness is what the hell's going on around me. You're not lost if you recognize you're in the fear loop. Remember that the picture of the fear loop? See that as a fucking hologram. You're walking around, things are good, and then all of a sudden you go, And you can't be lost. You go, I'm in the fear loop, because now I know which way to go. Anyone ever been really lost? Really lost, like driving somewhere, and then what happens when you see that signpost or that oh, there it is. What's the way to fear? You're like, oh my God, phew. Energy, your whole physiology changes, you're good to go. So it's amazing. See there's a hologram, walk on it, and then practice courage every day. You have an opportunity. Let me see if there's anything else here. Oh, 2 more. Fear is contagious, so is courage. I've said that before. It takes courage to manage fear and make fear your fuel. One last metaphor I got to share. Your body, because you guys are so many athletes here, in this metaphor, your body is the car, Your nav system is your mindset. But most of us don't want to have fear in our lives, so we want no fear instead of, I'm going to get to know fear, and I'm going to manipulate the fear, and I'm going to use it as my fuel. You don't need what I just talked about for the last exactly 45 minutes on the button. You don't need what I just talked about when you are not feeling fear, any type of stress or anxiety in your body. It's when you do that that you need to go, okay, what do I need to learn? You guys get the metaphor? Body, car, fuel. Because most of us are like, fear's in the back of fear's like in the back seat going, you're fucking driving too slow, you're gonna miss your turn, you suck. Right? And you need to get in the car, and you need to look at fear and go, fucking buckle up, man, here we go. Because fear, in that scenario, in that metaphor, is an unlimited resource. I don't need to use fear when I don't have fear. So now I'm asked to do something a little bit outside my comfort zone. I get a fear spike. I go, oh, I got this. I know what to do with this. It's amazing. I have so many other freaking cool little things to give you that would give you ideas and shit like that, but we'll figure it out another time how to do that. I have no idea how long I went over. I cannot thank you all enough for I had only had one person heckle, Gunnar Peterson, and let's give him a round of applause, Gunnar Peterson. I've been hinting at Bert to come here and talk for a few years, and I'm glad we finally pulled the trigger and made this happen. And it's so cool to meet all of you and see all of you guys, and like so many people I look up to in this room. And I was nervous to come up here, but I managed my fear, because fuck fear, right? And the last thing, fuck, I'm not being crude, fuck is an acronym. Face it, understand it, control it, and get to know fear. So next time you feel it, think to yourself, fuck fear. Got it? Thank you all. Thank you, sir. Thanks, buddy. Thank you. Thanks, man.